Are we really on the road to the mark of the beast? That is one of the questions I get asked quite a bit. So, in order to show the stones that are being laid, or the foundation for this mark of the beast, I want to center on two different things today. Number one, things that are becoming mandatory. And number two, IDing a person either by the hand or by the face. Because we know that Jesus told us in Revelation chapter 13, which you'll see later, that there would be a mark enforced in the right hand or in the forehead. So let's take a brief look at what I call the road to the 666. A new report came out from Breitbart today, January the 28th, 2021. The headline, Tony Blair pushes Boris to create global coronavirus vaccine passport at G7. For those of you who may be the younger generation, Tony Blair is the ex-Prime Minister of Great Britain. He's well known around the world. He's still a man of much power, much influence around the world. Listen to what the article has to say, and I'll come back.
Tony Blair pushes Boris to create global coronavirus vaccine passport at G7. By Jack Montgomery on January 28, 2021. Former Labour Prime Minister Tony Blair is pushing Boris Johnson to use British leadership of the G7 to create a global vaccine passport. The UK faces a choice, lead or be led, insists a new report from the Tony Blair Institute for Global Change, established by the Iraq War architect after he stepped away from electoral politics. If we choose to wait, a confusing array of different passports await our citizens, the Institute claims, suggesting that a global vaccine passport, or global COVID travel pass, would be in the people's best interests. We can avoid this and the complications of multiple passes and varying travel requirements if the UK takes the lead on developing a single, global COVID pass, the report adds. In the year of the UK's G7 presidency, there has never been a more momentous opportunity, or need, for the government to show global leadership. One option is that everyone just does their own thing, which is much more chaotic and difficult to manage. Or secondly, there's a set of global rules in place that you may not be that happy with, Blair told The Telegraph. It's better to have common rules and a common verification system, so that people know what your disease status is and know it with some validation, insisted the globalist leader, raising the prospect of a worldwide health authority choosing who can travel, and who cannot. Reports indicate that health and tech giants including Microsoft, the Mayo Clinic, and Oracle are already working on a digital vaccination passport. Top government ministers previously denied that the British government was looking at such a document, amid fears that it could introduce a papers, please culture redolent of the worst excesses of continental European government, in which the unvaccinated could find themselves reduced to second-class status. Despite these denials, the government is now already trialing vaccine passports in the form of smartphone apps. The European Union has already announced that it will recognize vaccine passports, and is actively considering proposals to issue them to all vaccinated persons. Mr. Blair did not indicate whether or not the introduction of global COVID travel pass requirements should mean that border forces could begin turning back the illegal aliens who have continued to enter British territory in large numbers throughout the pandemic, apparently unaffected by travel bans.
Since there's already talk about making vaccinations for the COVID sickness mandatory, check out what the CEO from Qantas had to say.
Alan, when there is a vaccine, are you going to require all of your passengers to be vaccinated before they get on a plane?
Yeah, we are looking at changing our terms and conditions to say for international travellers that we will ask people to have a vaccination before they can get on the aircraft. What do you need that domestically? We'll have to see what happens with COVID-19 in the market, but certainly for international visitors coming out and people leaving the country, we think that's a necessity.
Now, just so you have all of the information about this Tony Blair statement, take a look at this right here. This provides a link that takes you over to, you'll see it here, Tony Blair Institute for Global Change. And this is in reference to what you just saw in that report. So this posted the 28th of January 2021, introducing a global COVID travel pass to get the world moving again. You'll see there's a mask, the passport, and this would be the global vaccine card that you would have to carry in order to fly. The COVID-19 pandemic and the ensuing lockdowns and travel bans have led to the most profound deconnecting of society since the Second World War. Connecting the world by means of reopening international travel is going to require a coordinated effort that manages the risks of COVID-19 and offers uniform standards on testing and vaccines across borders. Of several new strains of COVID-19, specifically the strains out of Kent, South Africa, and Brazil, have added an additional dimension to discussions surrounding the reopening of global travel. The fact that COVID-19 mutates is not unique. All viruses do. But this virus mutations have included some which are much more transmittable and could potentially erode vaccines in the future. In response to these new strains, the UK has introduced its strictest quarantine measures on the pandemic, including a recent reports that some inbound travelers will need to quarantine at a hotel for 10 days upon arrival. It is important that the government has a plan to implement an effective process for lifting these restrictions and re-enabling safe international travel as soon as possible. To facilitate this, an international COVID pass is, now get this, inevitable. Now keep in mind, this is primarily the same thing that happened with money over the years. And what I mean by that is people kept saying, well, start using credit cards because they're much more safe. And it's harder to steal with the credit cards. Well, we found out that with hackers now, it really isn't that much more safe because millions of people around the world are being hacked and losing money constantly on their credit cards. And then what did we see? Well, there was a chip. The chip has been embedded in the hand. The chip has been able to deduct money from your bank account, and it has all different types of information on that chip that's in your hand. So it's much more harder to steal from your account because it's embedded in your hand. And in order to take the information that's off that chip, a person would have to cut their hand off. And you won't be seeing that too much. So as I was warning about the different methods, new methods of global economic means and how you can deduct money from your bank and how that road was also leading to the mark of the beast, we see the same footprints, if you will, with mandatory vaccinations. They're saying essentially the same thing as we heard about, get rid of cash because it's easier to control. It's easier to get it out of the hands of the black market. It's easier to control for the IRS, for people who are trying to hide their money. The scare tactics behind it is the same thing all over again that we're seeing. Now here's just one example of what I'm talking about, how you can now have a chip put in your hand and deduct from your bank account. This is a video I made a long time ago, 2015, and you'll see the news there, shaking up how we pay for things.
Pay for things.
You don't need your phone, you don't need your keys, you don't need a scan card.
It's the first cash register of its kind in the Midwest, and it's right here in Rockford.
A lot of people don't want to bring in their wallets, don't want to bring in any cash.
Whitney Martin profiles how the future of credit cards is inside our hands. Wednesday on 23 News.
Inside your hands. Once again, keep in mind, no other generation would be able to come up with this kind of technology until now. That's exactly what we see from the prophet Daniel when he said our generation would increase in knowledge. Our generation, we have seen the technology for identifying a person going into two different places, the hand and the face recognition. Let me bring you to another news article, so you'll have a clear picture of what I'm describing to you. And it's nothing I made up. This is information right from the news sources. And I firmly believe the people who are reporting most likely don't understand that what they're reporting is actually either fulfillment of prophecy or leading up to that prophecy that we see in the Word. So is everything leading down to identification in the hand or in the face? Definitely. This is news from the BBC 4 days ago. The headline, while your face could be set to replace your bank card. Here's a screen. She's going to be looking into it. Let me just read this very, very briefly for you. It says Sierra Stewart strolls into a Mexican restaurant in Los Angeles and orders a tortilla type of sandwich. To pay, she simply looks at her reflection in the small LCD screen attached to the cashier's counter. Then, to add her preferred amount of tip, she flashes a quick peace sign at the monitor. The entire process takes less than 5 seconds and is entirely contactless. Moreover, Ms. Stewart doesn't need to carry her mobile phone or bank card with her or show any form of identification or even enter a PIN number. Welcome to the futuristic world of financial recognition payment. It might sound like something from a science fiction movie, but this kind of transaction is already happening millions of times a day across China's major cities. With the technology now being introduced in the US and other countries such as Denmark and Nigeria, are we all going to be using it within a few years' time? And are there data security and privacy issues that we should worry about? And you see a picture of her showing up the peace sign, which is an indication of a tip. So, if you see the evidence leading to this kind of ID recognition, and you see it through the hand, and that's essentially what the Lord revealed to us in the last days, by the time that this man of sin, the Antichrist, shows up, all the technology is going to be available for him to institute his mark either on the forehead or in the hand. And if you can't see the road that we're on right now, I need to pray for you a lot harder, because it's right in our face now. The future of money and its transactions that they said way back in 1998 for the future has already come to pass and surpassed itself with the types of recognition and the technology available today. If there's one thing that you can count on for sure, you can count on Jesus to give you the truth. And when he gives you warnings about the future, please take those seriously, because in this generation, we're seeing the fulfillment of the Lord's words. If you have any questions, please email me. You'll see my email address at my website. Just go to BibleProphecyMan.com. And please do me a favor. If you like what you're hearing here and you want more, subscribe. I'll be here giving as much information as I can, connecting the dots between Bible prophecy and current events.